So we are gonna get going here and introduce our guest this evening, the newly re-elected state auditor and building mate of Flaherty and Hood. So we often see her in the elevator. Julie Blaha, who was first elected auditor 4 years ago. I think he is a math teacher by background and training. Is that correct?
Yes.
Very good. I've got that right. So she's a numbers person by nature. And also, if you are not aware, if you have not seen, she is one hell of a crop artist and is regularly featured at the state fair for her crop art, which is just an amazing talent in and of itself. And she takes it to next level. So with that, very happy to introduce State Auditor Julie Blaha. And I'm going to turn you around and then you can begin here, or I'm going to have Kelly do it because I'll knock the wires over. So very good to see you.
Good to see you.
Take it away.
All right, I'm excited to see the room here and see how. All right. Oh, what a good crowd. It's so good to see you all. I am so glad to be with you virtually. I wish I could be there in person, but unfortunately, I did pick up another bout of COVID. So just fun fact, if you think you're too busy to go get your next round of boosters, you're not. You're not. Go get them. Just get them. You'll be glad this variant does not play. So definitely make yourself a little bit healthy. You know, that's one thing, lucky at least I picked it up on election night. And the one good thing about having a result that comes in a tiny bit late is that you don't get to go out and infect the entire hotel with that. But again, I'm again really excited to be able to talk with you tonight. Thought I would share information with you that we've been sharing this year with people around the state. And in particular, in people who are working in local government like you all do. But before I even get too far into it, I just want to make sure that you all have my contact information. If any of you don't have my mobile number, if you can see it right there, 651-202-1996. Your tax dollars are paying for that phone. You absolutely could use it. Call me directly. I would love to have a conversation with you. You know, of course, if you're calling about your Fire Relief Association's fund, you're going to call Rose. But, you know, again, don't hesitate to put that number in your phone, share it as you think would be helpful as well. So just a quick reminder, though, I think this crowd kind of knows this already. Just a reminder that the Office of the State Auditor in Minnesota, we currently oversee about $60 billion, and it's in primarily local government spending. Now, I used to say 40 billion, and it used to be that, and that is basically what our local government share is. But we very recently, just this last year, in fact, picked up what's called the statewide single audit. And those of you who know your audits have a sense of what that is. And that's new work for us. And it fits in very nicely in between all of your schedules. So that has expanded our oversight to about $60 billion at this point. We do it three main ways, of course. We do examinations, audits, investigations, legal compliance checks, tax increment finance checks, all of those things to make sure that people are doing things the way we expect them to be done. We also, our goal is to provide direct support as well. So those of you who may use our CTAS tool, which is an accounting tool for local government in Minnesota specifically, we provide, we have calculators, we have direct calls with y'all. So don't hesitate to call us directly. Even if we don't always know your answer, we often know where you can get it. So again, keep us as a resource to give us a ring, whether it's in our legal department, in our government information division, our audit division, any of our divisions. Give us a call. We'd love to have a conversation with you. And then finally, we also take all that data that you give us and we give it back to you with some context in analysis so you can make decisions based on facts. And that's tonight what I want to focus on is one of our analyses that we started a couple years ago. And to kind of give this back to you from what we heard. So this is also a good way to know that all of you who have to put all that information into these forms, we are using it. We do use it. So thank you for that. It's not just going off into some, some big back warehouse. So just to remind you, for that, some of you, I think I've talked to about this directly. When I started out, I remember realizing, the president gets the State of the Union, and we have, the governor gets his State of the State. You know what does local government get? And we believe that you deserve your own state. And so we call it the state of Main Street. And what we do is we take our city, township, and county reports, pull the data together, and then share it with you all in a series of meetings around the state. And we try to get your feedback on what do you think these trends and these numbers mean. Then we take all of that, put it together, and see what we can share with everyone from both our data and your experience with it. And this year, our biggest focus was on what are we learning from what happened during the pandemic. How did dealing with a global crisis at a local level, what did we learn from that? Now, we're not done with that, of course. As many of you know, oversight like ours lags about a year. So even when COVID's done, we're still going to have another year of analysis of it. And so, this year right now, we're taking a look at, what were the struggles when you first started? Have we made the progress we hoped? And that's what we're going to look at in this round of audits. But before that, we're able to look at general trends on how you handled your funds. And we came up with 5 recommendations. Now, I would love it to have your response on these. So please don't hesitate to text me to ask questions later. What does this stuff make sense to you? Does this make as much sense to you as we hoped it did to us? So here was our first recommendation that we came to from this. First off, we believe we should continue to use local governments to customize crises responses. Even with a global pandemic, a global issue, local government had a very important role. We saw that local government stepped up in ways that they hadn't before. You've all responded to crisis. You've all gotten federal money for crisis before. Maybe it was for flooding, maybe it was for drought, maybe it was for a tornado, maybe it was for some other specific incident. But it was a little different this year, particularly in that you didn't just need to utilize the funds, you had to share them. But what we were responding to was bigger than any of our entities could handle. So virtually everybody had to be using subrecipients, we call them in auditing, or just other organizations that had to help get the work done. And so spending, people had more experience with, just very direct spending, but sharing is one of the things that felt newer for many organizations. And also the level at which you had to spend was also much higher. But we really believe that there was something great about using local government in this context. And I talk a couple, first off, there are some benefits to using local government. One, your community. If you want to customize something, if you want to make it very, very specific to an area, hey, it's local government. You literally know your community's best. Also, your community knows you. So what you're going to do with it, well, your community is going to be watching this. So not only do you know your community, you know the people who say would seek funds. You know that if Earl comes up to you and says, oh, you know what? I had to shut down the movie theater. I really need support for that. You could turn to Earl and say, Earl, I know you own a bait shop. No, I'm not doing that. You know your community. At the same time, they know you. You're going to have to talk about what you are doing with the money when you're in line at the grocery store. So you also have a higher accountability as well. And you can focus on your community. You do not have to solve all of the country's problems all at once, or even all the state's problems all at once. You get to focus on your area, and that gives these very customized responses a higher level of focus they would ever get if it was simply the federal level or the state level administering these programs. So there's some great benefits there. Of course, there's some challenges too. You know your challenges, particularly if you're in a small city, you know this, you may have a small number of staff. You know, it's just hard to have a lot of people to watch everything all at once. Also, you may have less experience with federal programs, particularly ones at the size we've been working with. And by the same token, the feds have less experience with local government as well. You can certainly ask the townships about this. There were times when the federal funds were sent out to townships for things that none of them do. And that could be a challenge as well. But despite that, what we saw was when local governments took COVID and CARES Act money, what they did was they did things like working to keep taxes stable. We're trying to get it as direct to local business, in some cases, local renters and other local residents as possible, as very direct and quickly as possible. And you work to replace lost revenue. Now, I think ultimately what we saw, the result of all of that really was, I think you kept us out of economic freefall. Without local government customizing things really well, I think we would have been hurtling to the ground pretty quickly. You were able to really cushion these impacts with the work that you did, and because it was so precise. Our second recommendation then goes off of that. It kind of goes with that. If that's the case, if there's such great opportunity, well, then we believe the federal government needs to tailor their grants to local needs as well. They need to provide you flexibility so that you can decide where is the best way to handle your money. If you want to put it toward roads, you put it towards roads. If public safety is where it needs to be more, it makes sense to give you some space to actually customize things really well. You also need to be very clear, because we know that confusion leads to hesitation, and hesitation usually leads to a lost opportunity. So making sure that you have the clarity you need to be able to actually just do the work. And you need time. You know, we all, I think, saw right away that quick time limits were really difficult. If you could have some real time to spend the money, that also means you have more time to plan for it. And money that's well planned generally goes further. So that's what we've been trying to communicate to our federal partners, is that flexibility, clarity, and time all will make these programs work better. Now, before just to clarify a little bit, I'm talking about flexibility. I don't necessarily, and time doesn't necessarily mean only speed. I think we've all seen, in fact, I had a training today with the Government Accountability Office. We talked about things that led to fraud, things that led to a waste or abuse in federal funds that went out during COVID. One of the biggest reasons that we see, and one commonality, is having to go at such a speed that under such unusual conditions often led to relaxing oversight, or relaxing internal controls, or relaxing monitoring. Now, that's different than flexibility. When I say flexibility, what we're saying is your ability to customize something, not necessarily saying that you could simply drop oversight. So I think going forward, we're going to have to worry about balancing flexibility, but not having people think that when we ask for flexibility, we're not simply asking for lax oversight or overly quick work. We're asking for opportunities, and that they're different. So I think that's going to be part of the debate. We may have to clarify flexibility and speed are not the same things, and have very different outcomes as well. We also noticed that we also recommended that people should be building up their collaborative teams before a crisis. We noticed that when you were connected, you were able to use those connections well. It was hard to build the connections during the crisis. It's the idea of dig your well before you're thirsty, for instance, that idea. And in fact, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir because you're in this room because you're making connections and you understand that. So those things, though, we should continue. Whenever, if you see someone saying, hey, we want to go it alone, remind them how important these connections can be to try just to figure things out during things. One example that we saw was with Options Inc. in Big Lake, Minnesota. When we were talking about this idea of collaboration, they came forward and said, hey, you know, because we were so well connected with our city, our county, and our townships around us, when things got tough, Options Inc. provides services for people with disabilities, in particular developmental disabilities. So they provide work experiences, care during the day, and several other options. Well, when this all happened, it was just devastating to their organization, and they're trying to figure out how to support their clients. And they said the city, the county, and their local township also all reached out to them. And that was huge. They said that made a huge impact. And it's because they were already connected going into this. So those connections can have great value. This will probably go over pretty well in this room. We also believe that we need to protect our intergovernmental funding sources. We've been saying our earlier States of Main Street talked about how important intergovernmental funds were, and that for many of you to try to keep things stable as intergovernmental funds had eroded over time, you've had to do a lot of things. Maybe you had to get grants. Maybe you had to do more joint powers. Maybe you've done everything you can to find a way to make up that difference. But we'd all picked a lot of that low-hanging fruit. There are not a lot of options left. So what we're seeing now is it's particularly important that we never look at a time to say, oh, hey, here's the source of money we can pull back for something else. No, it's really these intergovernmental sources, particularly things like local government aid, are really essential. They are an essential part of it. Now, this graph, you may not be able to read particularly well, but when you see which direction the line's going, I'll bet you won't be surprised. This is the impact of local government aid on your budget over time. What this is a graph of the percentage of your budget on average that local government aid has made up in Minnesota. And you'll see that for cities over time, it has fallen. And another way to look at it is the amount adjusted for inflation shows a similar trend. But this one shows that as your needs have gone up, your local government aid has not risen at the same level. And so we're seeing that erode. And it's important that local government, that the legislature understands this, that this is not something that if they see that it's gone up, that if they don't consider inflation and don't consider your needs, they could have this wrong impression that you're just rolling in cash. We know you're not. That local government aid, we need to be vigilant. We need to keep on it. I think some of the changes in the last legislative session were helpful, but we can't let that erode over time because it is a really key part of your budgets. And then finally, our final idea was, let's be sure that we capture the results of your pandemic responses. You all have done some great things. And it's really important that you write them down somewhere, document it somewhere, keep track of what you figured out. I know at one point we're talking about, Duluth was talking about how they had developed a list of things they would have liked to have been able to do with COVID money. And even though they weren't able to get through that whole list, that list itself now has some real value and help and utility for them. So capture what you did, figure out what you did. As you're fixing up your infrastructure to watch your subrecipients, to help share that money, really work that down, get that really saved. And a good example of why that can be helpful. During the floods, I was up touring Rainy Lake, and one of the things I heard from several of their local government officials was how this was easier because they had kept such good records from the last flood. They had kept their processes, they had kept track of the vendors they used, they had kept track of what worked and what didn't, and they were able to pull that back up in quick order, get right back up to speed. And again, I think we all love it if we could say that we won't have to deal with a global crisis again at the local level, but I think we all know better than that. So it may not be the same, but the things that you learned have such great value. Let's capture them so that we can start that much further ahead when the next time we need to respond. So those were basically our recommendations. Those are our big ideas, the ones I'm sharing around. We are now in the process of building our reports again for our next round. And now we're going to look at, in our next round for the state of Main Street, we're looking at, okay, are these things all bearing out? And have we learned anything further from this? And now, how are we handling the aftermath of COVID? And what are you doing and what can we learn from that? But I think my biggest message is from all the numbers that I've seen, is thank you. Truly, the work that you did over the last couple of years in particular has been life-saving for your communities. And there are days when it probably felt less glamorous, the day you're trying to figure out how to categorize everything and report everything properly and try to find an auditor when they all seem to be taken up. All of those things that you're doing, those have value and they are doing good. They're keeping our communities together in difficult times and giving people a place to come together, get something done and have some success. And in times that can be divisive, that is invaluable. So I cannot thank you enough for everything you've done. Your work shows up in our numbers. And I know that I hope tonight will take a, maybe have a libation or two, whatever your treat is. You've earned it. You have it, because you have definitely done good for the state. So I hope you make some choices tonight that are fun for you, because again, Minnesotans are in your debt for that. And with that, those are my big thoughts, but I'm happy to take any questions if you'd like, or let you get back to the connections that are so important for you to make.
Let's see if we have any questions. Any questions for the auditor?
Talk about the landslide victory. Oh, by the way, can I just say a special thank you? If you, nobody appreciates local election officials and people who volunteered during the election, like somebody whose vote is close. So thank you to everyone who made sure that I was able to get those results at 5:38 in the morning, and then they were complete. Thank you. That was huge. It made a big difference.
So Auditor Blaha, can you hear me?
Oh, I can now. Yes.
Oh, excellent. So I don't have a question so much as I do want to thank you for your recognition of the important role that LGA plays in supporting our communities, in holding down costs, and in helping to build thriving, vibrant communities. Hopefully you see that flow through in the numbers and the analysis that you're doing, and I just wanted to thank you for that recognition and encourage you to definitely take that message to all of your colleagues in state government.
I appreciate that. Yes, I think that most legislators understand that we're always going to have an LGA CPA township aide chat every time they talk to me. And it's like, hey, by the way, you guys aren't messing with that, are you? Hey, you know what? That's kind of important. Don't mess with it. And so, yes, I will absolutely keep that going. Again, you've all proved that you're going to do things with it that Minnesotans are hoping will be done with their tax money. And that's, as long as that keeps going, hey, you know what? It's easy to send that message.
Any other questions for Auditor Blaha? We have one in the back. Hold on, Auditor.
Hi, Auditor Blaha. I'm Billy Morales from the city of Albuquerque, Minnesota.
Oh, could you speak just a bit louder? Kind of yell at me.
Sure. I wanted to know if you could help us a little bit at the local level with some of our regulatory functions. My community owns its hospital for 4/12/2021 subdivision 16. In working with a municipal-owned hospital, sometimes boards and councils are not understanding that the hospital's financial statements belong to the city, and you can have issues with your audit. My community has turned in audits to the state's office for a number of decades without that particular function. And they were unqualified until we started with the turnover and we restructured everything. And so what I'm asking for is, in these specific cases, there's only about 9 total hospitals that are owned in that manner in Minnesota. How can we educate these communities to understand GASB standards, enterprise funds, and how they should perform, and not have the city administrator beat up for it?
No, that's a great, I think you make a really good point. And so, yeah, that is a good opportunity for us to give us a call, our legal special investigations department, for instance. And there are many times when sometimes we're one more letter saying, hey, I know if you're not going to believe it from me, hey, this come from the state auditor. And if that's something we need to make a more formal position so you can more easily pull it and say, no, I'm just going to point to you right now. You have to give this to us. And if that's not working, we could certainly maybe talk about, is there legislation we need to make that more clear? But that's a great point. I think that idea about transparency is just so key, because at the heart of it, again, it helps your audits, and it also helps build trust in your community. And especially with areas like healthcare, where we know there's the money is big, and some of the suspicion is growing. So this would be a particularly good time for us to be making sure that healthcare entities are being transparent, not just for your own record keeping and your own audits, but also just for the trust in the community, which is going to be so key. So yeah, if something like that happens, please give us a call at our office, or again, call me and we can hook you up and see if there's something we can provide to, help at least be in your corner going, yeah, she's right. He's right. Do it. Agree with them.
All right, anything else? All right, well, thank you, Auditor, for all of your time today, and I know everyone appreciated it. Everyone give another round of applause.
I thank you. I can't wait to come see you again when I won't be coughing on you. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, and we hope to see you again sometime soon.
Again, your partnership, I do want to thank you, also say, all the people that work with your organization, by the way, have been tremendous. I know that I pick up the phone, they immediately answer it. If I have any questions, you guys have been great to work with and have really helped us. So I can't wait to continuing that partnership. It's been just extremely helpful to our office as well. So thank you for that. All right, with that, have a good night, people. Make some choices.
Thank you. Have a good night.